Hey amigos, Faxi Nadu here, and today I want to talk about buying and selling and trading secondhand synths for the budget musicians. The reason I'm kind of making this video is I got a lot of friends and people that ask in general, that are making music and are using mostly the computer and maybe some controllers, and they want to get into buying a synth. And of course, there's a lot of hype on synths, many expensive and cool things, and really big brands. Moog is putting out new stuff, and there's the Profits and really expensive and cool stuff that you can really drool on. Every NAM show brings amazing things. But I want to kind of give you my philosophy on this, which is to keep things a little more sane, and instead of spending tons of money, spend a lot less and still get to mess around with a lot of synths. I want to show you my the synths that I've used, and I'm not showing you this to brag about it. I don't even own all of this. At a time, I own maybe 5, 6, 7, between anywhere between 5 and 10 synths. But I trade and sell and buy. So my kind of philosophy is to get a chance to be able to really kind of try out all sorts of stuff and still not spend a lot of money, and have all these things in my tracks um, over the years, So what am I talking about here? So let's say you're first of all, let's put one thing aside. If you have a ton of money and you have a big budget, and if you're really going for the expensive stuff and you don't mind to do that, or you have a ton of synths and you know what you're doing, this isn't for you. This is for the guys that are kind of considering what to do, what to get for their kind of first few synths. So let's just to put this aside. This is just the technical consideration. This stuff should be familiar to all of you. But when looking at a synth, you kind of categorize it, what it is, what it does. The first thing you kind of obviously look at is analog or digital. And that matters for a few reasons. Digital is much more stable. Digital doesn't drift out of tune. Digital tends to age a little bit better, like as in like the hardware stays in good condition longer. Analog is obviously sexier, fatter sometimes, and all that shazam. Are we looking at a monophonic or a polyphonic synth? Monophonic synths sometimes have really beautiful mono voices, and you might want to make like acid stuff or bass lines and even leads. You might want a monophonic one, but polyphony, obviously, especially if you're on a budget and you're not going to buy a ton of synths, will having a really cool like Moog, I don't know, like a sub fatty or slim fatty, which costs a lot of money. Is that your thing? Or do you want like to buy a few polyphonic synths? There's no right or wrong here, okay? Just the considerations. Does it have a keyboard, or is it just a desktop version? Does it come in a rack? Usually rack mount means a lot less knobs, not always, but usually. Or does it have a sequencer? Now I'm talking about, for example, you could look at the K station. For this, for example, this has a keyboard. This has a sequencer inside that can double as a keyboard. We'll talk more about good values with these things. So it's stuff to consider. And the size of this thing. Obviously, do you want it just for the studio? Do you want it to gig? Do you want it in your backpack? Do you want a big synth and you don't mind? Like the Trinity, it's huge. So I really wanted just to get this slide out of the way. These are things that we keep in mind, of course, and to suit your needs and when kind of looking at a machine. Now let's get to the buying tips themselves. It's not a lot of stuff, but this is kind of my kind of philosophy on how to buy synths. Obviously, you can go any other way. I want to talk first about the price. Now, you may not like it, you may not agree with it, especially if you're selling something. But for me, this is just my own guideline. If I'm buying something used, even if it says brand new, still in the box, still in the wrapper, that doesn't impress me at all. If it's not new from the shop, if I'm not going to the store and buying it, I expect it to be at least 1/3 less of the original price. Now, obviously, if you're selling something, you have no obligation to me to offer it for 1/3 less. But I'm just saying that if it's not at least 1/3 less, personally, I'm not even looking at it. This is kind of like, as I said, my guidelines. If I want to, if it's not like this, and I want the machine, I'll probably consider to buy it new and not used, even if it's like bought, like the guy bought it 1 month ago or something. The second thing is buy local. Now, it really depends where you live and on your region. Maybe if you're in the US and you're buying on eBay, it's a little bit less of an issue. But for me in Israel, sometimes ordering like on eBay, something obscure online that is coming from half the world away, it's not that reliable. I don't get to see the machine. And sometimes there's customs involved, and sometimes there is shipping involved. And just like my experience, it's not always worth the price, even if you find like the machine itself is a little bit cheaper than you would find it locally. Um, I try to 99% of the time just find something like on boards. In Israel, we have this. Let's see, we have this board, and I can check it out. And I'm sure every one of you guys, wherever you live, has like a board for synths and stuff like that. So, and you also get to check the machine, and if you go buy it from the guy, you know where he lives. It's kind of less chance to get ripped off. That's what I'm saying. Now, some of you may not like this one as well, but for me, stay away from vintage analog. And of course, if you're a synth collector or you have like a lot of money and a lot of synths and a special love for vintage stuff, then you will get vintage analog. For the rest of us, I'd recommend to stay away from that for a number of reasons. First of all, vintage obviously automatically drives the price up, sometimes for no reason, just because it's like, cool and the cool factor, the sexy factor. The second thing is those vintage analogs they're not always in the condition you expect it. You'll be listening to like a Moog Model D, online, and it'll sound amazing and all of that. And then you'll find one that is not as perfectly preserved. Some of the knobs are like cranking, some stuff isn't working, some keys aren't working. And it's usually not worth the price unless you really know your stuff, and a good technician or a technician by yourself. If you're a budget musician looking for your first synth, don't go here. Don't even look there. Maximize functionality, knobs, sliders, keyboards. I tend to, because I trade so much, I want to have the most functionality out of every single one of my synths, because I never know when I'll use this guy as like my master keyboard or my live keyboard. I don't know if I might sell this guy. Maybe I'll use this now. I want all my synths ideally to have a lot of knobs, like this one, for example, to have a keyboard, and to have everything. Even though, if it didn't have the keyboard here and it was just a rack mount, you could say you could just connect a controller, but I prefer it this way when buying budget stuff. I think it's a much better way to go. Go less for the rack mounts of the world. For example, the Waldorf MicroQ, which is a great sounding synth, but it offers just 4 knobs and no keyboard. And so this synth will be just an engine for you, as great as it sounds, but this thing can do more for you. It can be a controller, it can be a keyboard, it can be a sequencer. This can easily be your master keyboard and controller. So it's something to consider. If you have these two, then okay, you might want to get this. But if you're buying your first synth, as great as the Waldorf line and as legendary the Q is and everything, this might not be your best option at all. Especially considering where you could probably buy this, and this for virtually more or less the same price range. So consider that at all times. Role play and vary the palette. So what I mean is, if I have this guy, which is a virtual analog, then I might want to get this guy, which is like a Rompler, a sampled instruments. Go for as much sound as you can. Don't always go for the same type. Don't develop like a fetish for like, I don't know, if we go back here, don't develop for a fetish for monophonic, analog, desktop synths, get a sound, and continue expanding your sound at all times as much as you can, especially again, obviously, too, considering that you're on a budget, okay? Trade instead of buying. Now, really, really good stuff that I enjoy and I use all the time, of course, I will keep. But there's always stuff coming and going. So instead of spending tons of money, like I said here, I can really afford to try a lot of stuff, to have it in my music. I usually, like if I get a machine, let's take, for example, something that I had here. I had the EMU Morpheus. So I got it. I used it in a track or two. And I also sampled it for like for samples that I can use and samples that I can sell and stuff like that. Um, and then I moved on. I traded the Morpheus, and I don't know. That's not probably not the trade itself, but for example, I could trade the Morpheus and get the Carnival, and then I can do the same with the Carnival, and you really develop. It goes back to varying the palettes, and you're doing that even though you're trading and you're not even owning all these synths that you're trying out. Consider it more like a library, and you get to really experience and decide for yourself what is good and what you want to keep. Don't buy something you won't be able to sell. Again, some of you may not agree with this one, because you'll be saying, I don't even want to sell it. I want to buy something that I don't want to buy crap. If I'm buying something, I want to keep it. Why would I want to sell it? If that's what I'm going for, then I'm doing something wrong. But I don't agree. It goes back to the trading. The whole philosophy here is that it's dynamic, right? You want to be able to trade. You want to be able to sell. You want to be able to buy new stuff. You want to be able to experience once you get 2 or 3 synths. I don't think you need to buy your 4th, your 5th, your 6th, your 7th and keep them all to collect dust on your shelves. So don't buy something you'll be stuck with, like in an obvious way. And if you notice stuff that is kind of hard to move, then just don't go there. Don't go to that area again. Buy tools, not luxuries. So this goes back to the whole discussion about if you should buy like really expensive synths and put your all your eggs in one basket, or you should buy a varied amount of stuff. Now, there's no right or wrong here. Some of you might say, I'm going to buy myself fuck all this stuff. I'm going to buy just 1 or 2 really good things, like a Prophet or something that is polyphonic and something pretty new from all that. But some of you might consider that a luxury. If you're just getting one tone. So I try to stay away from that, even though of course I drool on these really, really cool synths as well. But I know that I'm better off actually buying like a Trinity, a MicroQ, AN200, a K-Station, and a Virus A, and I could get all that for like a fraction of the price that like something like a new Prophet or a new Moog would cost. So always consider what is for you a tool and what is for you a luxury. Don't just don't go for the sexy, go for what you'll use, is my bottom line. Just one more small thing, stay away from pocket synths and toys. Now, I myself sometimes get tempted by this. There's a lot of cheap stuff going on, but it's usually not worth your money. All the little, sort of Korg Monotron and stuff like that. You could probably use it a little bit in your music, but I don't know. Bottom line, they're just not that great, and the lure of the cheap prices that you can pay for these things is usually not really worth it. You could get really cool stuff, as I'll show, price for value, that is not much more expensive than these pocket synths. So I try to stay away from that. Now, bottom line, best price value to me is on aging digital synths, like the examples I opened up here, like the classic Virus, the AN1X, for example, from Yamaha, the Nord lead line, the older ones, the AN200 from Yamaha, the Korg Tritone or Trinity line. And let's take another quick look. I know I've shown them, but for example, so this thing goes for just a few $100, depends on where you're living. It has a ton of knobs, sliders, 2-octave keyboard. It's a digital synth. It's pretty rugged and durable. It has good resale value, and again, it's not expensive at all. It's not really huge, but it's robust enough to be kind of even your master controller in the studio or in a live setup. And again, good sound and affordable, and it provides a lot. You're not breaking the bank, and you're getting a good machine. So this would be like in the keyboard category. We can look at the Yamaha AN200, and I'll emphasize again, it has a lot of knobs. It has a good synth engine, the Yamaha AN engine, which sounds great. It has a sequencer inside. You can use it to sequence inside here, like a beatbox, which also has 3 drum channels, so you have like a 4-channel sequencer. You can use it to sequence external synths, or you can click here and press keyboard mode, and as you'll see, these are the white keys, and these are the black keys. You have a 1-octave keyboard, which for like techno or trance and some electronic music, it's already very useful. And it'll fit in your backpack. And again, it's a few $100. Usually you could find it, and it'll be in a good condition. So this is another example of a good buy. You're not breaking the bank at all, and you're getting something with tons of functionality, with good sound, and that also contradicts the VST sound, you know? It'll complement the sound that you already have and provide something unique to your palette. So for me, for example, this is a great buy if you find one. The Waldorf MicroQ, I just, I don't know if it's a great buy, actually. I just put it to kind of contrast the other stuff. Again, it's a great engine, but if you have just this, if this is like one of your first synth, you might be a little bit disappointed, not because of the sound, but because of, I think that in the end, in the bottom line, you won't be using it that much. It'll get to a point where it starts to collect dust really quickly, because other than the engine, it doesn't provide you with much more. You don't get knobs. You can't use this thing as a controller. You can't use it as a keyboard. And, the fact that it doesn't have knobs, not just for using it as a controller, it's a little bit obscure these days, There's a lot of menuing in here and all that stuff. So, not saying this isn't a great synth. I've had this synth and I love this synth. But if you're looking at price and value, you could get for the same price something that gives you a little bit more, especially if you're just starting out. Again, I want to look at something a little bit different. So the Korg Trinity, I purposely put the Trinity and not the Tritone because it's a little older even than the Tritone. So the difference between the Trinity and the Tritone is basically that the Tritone is just the newer one. And Korg have, I actually stopped following the newer ones. They have newer workstations. I don't even remember what is the newest one called, but I don't even care, I'm not looking for the newest and best sample station, or how do you call these type of synth, like the instrument station. I just need, good strings, good pads, good keyboards, good bass lines, good everything in an instrumental and a professional package from Korg. And the Trinity is full of classic sounds, and it's a great machine. Personally, I even got mine. The guy was selling it for really, really cheap because the module, like this pitch wheel, wasn't working. So it's kind of a bummer that it's not working, but I still got like this beast of an engine for very cheap, for like $100. And if you go to buy a good string sample pack online today, a digital string sample pack, it'll easily cost you $100, and for the same price, you get this really, really good and professional sounding synth from Korg that could serve as a master keyboard in the studio as well, if it's in good condition. And it's a joke, you could get it for like $100. My friend also got his for $100, but he got the rack. In this case, it doesn't serve, like we said, the full functionality, but for the price, I think it was still a good buy. Last thing, of course, obviously the Access Virus A, and I want to show the A to contrast with all, for example, with the Virus Snow or something like that. So obviously the TI and all the newer viruses have more to the synth engine itself. But the Virus A sounds amazing. It has a ton of knobs. It could easily serve as a master controller in the studio. Knobs that feel great. It's built very well. It's not that big. You could take it in your backpack to live shows. It looks sexy. It sounds sexy. It's a great machine. And because Access released the B, the C, and the TI, and all of that, it goes for really cheap next to the later models of this synth. And for much cheaper, for like a fraction of the price. And I think it's an amazing buy, and it's a really gritty synth. So again, sometimes if you just go a few models back, and you'll get a much better value. To me, I'd rather buy this than buy a Virus TI. It would serve me more, and I would spend less money. So these are my tips. I hope you found something here. I know it's nothing groundbreaking, but this is just kind of my philosophy. If you follow all of this, you could start out spending like, I don't know, let's take 1,000, no, much less actually, like $500, 500 euros, buy a couple of things, and every now and then, get something for 200 or 300, or trade something, and you'll easily just build a large amount of synths, and I think you can have some good stuff. You know, even if you don't spend the thousands, you'll have really great machines and you'll have a lot of fun. So thanks for watching. Check out our other videos and our music. See you later.